Hello everyone. Today, I'll be narrating 4 new creepy posts that I found off of the Let's Not Meet subreddit. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel helps me a lot. After you've heard these stories, let me know what you thought of them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
This happened when I was 19. I went to get drinks with my female friend after classes, and we ended up staying at a bar close to our university until around 10 p.m, getting pretty drunk. I live in Moscow, and the university where I study is located pretty far away from my house. It takes me about 1.5 hours by public transport to reach it. The friend I was with lived in a dormitory which was much closer, just a 30-minute metro ride away from uni, so we decided I would stay with her until her station and then switch lines to go up north where I live. By that time, there weren't that many people inside the train car, just a few passengers here and there, and a couple of older men sitting directly in front of us. We were both visibly drunk. It was a fun evening, so we joked around and laughed a lot. Then my friend got off, I said goodbye to her, and since alcohol usually makes me sleepy, dozed off immediately after she left. The whole time one of the men seated in front of us would silently glance at us from time to time. I assumed he was judging us because we were obviously drunk, but ultimately paid it no mind. I ended up accidentally missing the station where I needed to switch lines, which meant I had to take the train in the opposite direction. As I got up and walked to the door of the train car, there was nothing suspicious, but then I noticed the older, looked like he was in his 50s, man who was staring at me during the whole train ride also get out of the train a couple seconds after me. Again, I wasn't particularly alarmed at that moment. I tried not to jump to conclusions too quickly out of fear that it's just me being paranoid. The weird part started when the same dude not only followed me out of the train car, but also got in the train going in the opposite direction. He wasn't following me closely. He would stay several meters away and act like he wasn't looking at me. But as soon as I stepped foot on that train, he rushed to the next train car, and once there, slowly moved to stand next to the window from where he could see my car. I probably wouldn't even notice him if I didn't see him looking at me earlier and decided to keep an eye on him. By then I was properly alarmed. If he simply got off at the same station as me by coincidence, why would he need to go back in the same direction, and why would he linger back and make sure I got on the train before entering it himself? Still though, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, so I ended up skipping the transfer station I actually needed on purpose and getting off at the one right after that. Again, he exited at the same station and lingered back. I transferred lines. This new station was a transfer too, just another line. If you look at the map of the Moscow metro, you'll know that there is quite a lot of them next to each other in the city center, and sure enough, he followed me to the station at the new line. Now, I was wondering what to do. I considered looking for metro employees and informing them of the issue, but couldn't see any. I also considered walking up to some random strangers and asking them for help or pressing the SOS button on the machines installed inside each metro station if the situation got worse, but I wasn't too terrified just yet. I didn't feel comfortable staying at one station with him following me for a long time, so I got into the train again. The intervals are 2 to 5 minutes, and sure enough, he got into the next train car and came up to the window again. I got off at the next station, and he got off after me again. By that time, I was getting increasingly angry and looking for any metro employees, but still there wasn't any. I decided to try and shake him by hiding behind the columns until the next train came and getting inside at the last possible moment, and just as I stepped behind a column, I saw him walk to the center of the station. Before that, he would linger next to the columns by the other side of the platform and look around. What I did next might not have been the smartest move, but I was suddenly very angry at the whole situation. People were still present at the station, and it was clear that this guy was trying not to get noticed. So I purposefully walked right up to him and looked him dead in the eye with all the hatred I felt that moment. He looked taken aback at first, and then tried to act like he was just some random passerby, turned around, walked a bit away from me, and stood there awkwardly while I kept staring right at him. It went on like that until the train arrived, and just like I planned, I got on at the very last second just to make sure he wouldn't run after me, and that was, thankfully, the end of it. I was shaking the whole train ride home and switched lines and stations like 3 more times to make sure he wasn't still following me, but thankfully he seemed to give up. So stay safe and be careful with the people who get off at your train and bus stops. This happened about 11 months ago when me and my wife got married in June. I'll never be so grateful that I have a habit of locking doors. Our wedding day was coming to an end. Family and friends were slowly starting to depart as me and my wife Diana took pictures and chatted with some of the guests who stayed a little longer and were just having a good time. It was a great day and a lot of fond memories were made, but was the least expected is what happened that night as we were on our way to our honeymoon. As me and Diana said goodbye to the last of the guests at around 9 p.m, we got into the car and headed home. We had our bags packed prior to the wedding day for Cancun and were ready to go. I live in Washington, and we're in a bit of a hurry because instead of flying out from Seattle Airport and SeaTac like normally people do, it was a lot cheaper for us to drive north to Canada and fly out from a Canadian airport. Also, me and my wife thought it'd be fun to have a little road trip to Canada and then fly out from Canada to Cancun. Plus, it was only a 3.5 hour drive for us and cheaper, so we headed out at around 12 a.m. We had a great time driving, blasting music, talking about Cancun, and just being excited about the new chapter in our life. Deanna slowly started to fall asleep, being exhausted from the wedding and whatnot. We were halfway to Canada. At this point, we were no longer in city area, but more of a wooded area with fewer cars and fewer people the more we drove, practically seeing no one on the road. By that time, it was around 3 a.m. We had some extra time on our hands and I was starting to fall asleep too, so I pulled over to a gas station to get some Red Bull to keep me awake. I pulled into the gas station that was completely empty and parked the car to see Deanna asleep. I told her I'm taking the keys and locking her inside and that I'd be right back. Not sure if she could hear me, but she kind of motioned her hand around like people normally do when they're too tired to care. I came back around 6 minutes later to find my wife shaking and crying, and I was confused and freaking out a bit because I wasn't really sure why she was crying. She couldn't even get words out first. Later, once she calmed down, she told me this. Apparently she did hear me when I told her I'd take the keys and be right back. And as she was sleeping, she was awoken by a tapping on the driver's side window. Being too tired to get up or even open her eyes, she lazily went for the unlock button or the passenger side of the door. As she was going for it, she froze. A thought passed her mind, then she remembered. Didn't he say he had the keys? Why would he need me to unlock the door for him? That's when she heard a woman's voice mumbling from the driver's side. She turned herself around to look at the window and saw a woman. Long black hair with wide eyes and a crooked smile on her face. She couldn't hear what she was saying at first, but then she heard about what she was saying. She kept repeating in a mumbled tone, "Are you tired?" over and over. She freaked out and told the woman to leave her alone. The woman laughed and told my wife that she was tired too. The woman never took her eyes off her and tried the door handle. At this point, my wife was close to tears and attempted to call me, but as she did, she heard what sounded like a phone buzz and realized I left my phone in the car. Out of options, my wife started to honk the horn, trying to scare off the woman while also maybe getting my attention. The woman still had her gaze on her and started mumbling more while laughing and trying the door handle again. Then she mentioned something about someone named Sarah and asked my wife if she knew her. After a few more minutes of mumbling, she left. To my wife's words, the minute she left, I came out of the gas station, so my wife broke down. I don't know how I didn't hear the honking of the car, and I still feel bad for leaving my phone in the car. My wife also added that one of the creepier things about the woman is she didn't look homeless or dirty or anything. In fact, she seemed normal and well kept. My wife said she'll never forget the woman's wide eyes and the gaze she had on her with that smile. It also chills me to think what would have happened if my wife never realized that I had the keys, or if she never heard me about locking her inside and opened the door while she faced the other way. I don't know what those women's intentions were, but if I couldn't hear the honk of the horn, I probably wouldn't have been able to hear screams. To this day, I'm thankful I have a good habit of locking doors, and I recommend it no matter how long you're going to be gone. To preface this, my family had a house that was fairly secluded. We had 2 neighbors close by, but past that we didn't have anyone else within walking distance. I'll try to condense this as much as possible, but the story came up while at a funeral. This happened several years ago, maybe 14 or 15 years. Anyway, I was home alone, which wasn't rare. Typically when staying home alone, I'd play video games or watch a movie, which we had in the basement, and you really wouldn't be able to tell anyone was home unless you knew someone was there. I remember hearing noises that sounded like they were on our outside, non-enclosed patio, but I brushed it off as tree branches, animals, and things like that would frequently fall onto the patio and make noise. It used to send red flags off in my head when I was younger, but I kinda grew numb to it over the years. But I continued playing video games, and every once in a while I'd hear a soft thump or thud on the outside patio. At one point I went upstairs to get food, and the basement came into the kitchen. The kitchen had a door that we kept locked, not the best lock in the world, that went into the enclosed patio that we locked with a stronger lock, and the enclosed patio led to the non-enclosed patio which anyone can just walk into. Anyway, I was walking to the kitchen to get food or drink or whatever and glanced out onto the enclosed patio. I just naturally do it as when my parents are home they normally sit out there and take in nature, and had to literally back up and look again. When I glanced over, I kind of checked out to the fact that there was a guy, had longer hair, looked a little worse for wear, and he was on the inside of the enclosed patio. I backed up to look at him and he kind of was looking around the patio when he noticed I was watching him from the inside of the house. He looked a little shocked at first, but then he walked over to the door and knelt down in front of it. He looked creepy, but he talked extremely nice and polite. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like, "Hey, don't worry. Your mom wanted me to come by and check on you," and I remember he used my mom and dad's name too, but my red flags were flying because my mom always had our neighbor be the emergency checkup person. He was a retired cop and worked from home, so he was always around. I more or less told him I definitely wasn't opening the door and that I was going to call my mom. I was more bluffing because I didn't have a cell phone. They weren't the most popular things for kids to have several years ago, and I knew that he'd more than likely be able to open the door regardless of whether I attempted to block it or not. The door had a really pathetic lock, and even I could open it if it was locked, but the enclosed patio had a real lock and was the more protective lock to deter people. He didn't seem too fazed by my threat to call my parents, and I couldn't leave to get the phone because I felt like as long as I had my eyes on him, he wouldn't come in or bother trying the door. But after what felt like an hour of just looking at each other through the door, he got up and walked away. I remember watching him leave around the side of the house, to the front and down the driveway. I never saw him again and immediately called my neighbor and parents once he was out of sight. My neighbor was there in less than 2 minutes and he called the police on the way over. My mom came home a little while after that and we found out the guy had somehow broke the lock to the enclosed patio with sticks/tools that he found outside or had on him. They found out he knew my mom and dad's name by going through the mailbox prior to trying to enter. I just hope that the man doesn't try to come back. This happened when I was a sophomore in high school. I used to take a private bus to school and back. However, when it came to dropping me off home, I was always the last one because I lived a little bit outside of my school district. My bus driver couldn't drop me off after dropping everyone in my school off because she had to pick up the elementary school kids. As a high schooler, we left school much earlier. So I either had to wait for her to drop every elementary school kid off, or I could just walk home from the elementary school. That school was fairly close to my house. It was only about a 10-minute walking distance. I would walk home every day from that stop. On one particular day, I got off the bus that would park behind the school's field in the back and started walking towards this adjacent parking lot. The school is located in front of a very busy street that was connected to the highway, and in front of the school there was a mall. I always wore headphones to avoid the noise of the busy street while I was walking home. When I got to the other parking lot, a small white car had pulled up and the guy inside it started calling out to me. I usually ignore everyone that tries to talk to me while I'm walking home, but I accidentally made eye contact, so I decided to see what he wanted. I didn't notice it then, but looking back, the man was acting very strange. He was sort of jumpy and sweaty. His car was old and he had a mess inside. In his passenger seat was a woman who looked annoyed or angry. I assumed they were just hot because it was nearly 90 degrees outside. He was asking me if I knew where the mall was. Now the mall is across the street, but there was a few shops independent of it that you had to go around. It's still visible to the naked eye though. I told him yeah, just go straight from behind the school, make a right, cross the busy street, then make a right at the mall. He was acting like he didn't understand what I was saying and asked if he knew Spanish, so I explained in Spanish. Again, he pretended he didn't understand, so he asked if I could get inside his car and take him to the mall, then he would drop me off home. In my stupid mind at the time, all I thought was this guy was really annoying because you can literally see the mall from here. I was also thinking that maybe I should take the ride home since I really didn't want to walk home in that heat. However, something inside me was telling no, don't get into this man's car. He kept trying to convince me, and the more he talked, the more nervous he got. Behind me there was another car stationed next to a tree. Sometimes parents would wait for their kids a couple minutes before school was over. There was a woman in the car with her window down, just glaring at the guy. The guy kept looking behind me and at her. After rejecting him politely for the millionth time, he finally said okay, thank you, and sped off. I thought what a weird guy and that maybe he's not from here, which is why streets are confusing to him. The lady behind me said, "Be careful who you talk to." I looked and awkwardly smiled and said yes, thanks. On my way home, all I felt was annoyance. At the guy for interrupting me while I was walking home, and the lady for talking to me as if I didn't know about stranger danger. Years later, I realized that the man was trying to kidnap me. He was trying to get me inside his car, and the lady behind me staring at him was making him very nervous. The passenger woman was probably there to get kids' confidence, but she was probably annoyed that she had to be there. Maybe she didn't want to be there, I don't know. It honestly gives me chills to think they went to his school to try to pick up children. I wonder who else they tried talking to. There's parents and security around, which is why I didn't see him as a threat at first. But if it weren't for my gut feeling, I could have easily gotten into his car and disappeared. Also, that lady's presence really scared him off. I just hope that I never have to see that van in the future. Alright, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments below. But as always,
Have a nice day.